Hi, everyone. Welcome to All Things Breastfeeding. I'm Barbara Robertson, your host of the podcast, where we discuss happenings around the breastfeeding world. I am joined again with my co-founder of LactaLearning, Nancy Mohrbacher. Nancy, thank you so much for joining us as per usual.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well, so today we have more of a loosey-goosey topic. Um, Normally, we have a lot of research to back up what we're talking about. But what this is a common phenomenon, and it
Mhm.
can really, really cause problems for families.
Mhm.
And so, what we're going to be talking about is the second night syndrome. And so, Nancy, what is the second night syndrome? What is the definition of this?
Yeah, I've never heard it called a syndrome before,
Oh,
but
they're in the literature
is that
now.
right?
The
Okay.
syndrome.
Okay, I would say I would call it a normal developmental stage
Yeah.
after
Hmm.
delivery. What it means, like typically what happens is the very first day after a baby is born, both the mother and baby are really tired because birth is exhausting for both
Right.
of them. And so they have kind of a very laid back, sleepy first day. And then the baby kind of wakes up, and oftentimes it's at night,
Hmm.
where the baby just is very fussy, seems unsatisfied, wants to nurse constantly. And now you have an issue because it's like, well, wait a minute, I thought my baby was just so easygoing and laid back. And now suddenly the baby's not acting that way.
Yeah, I think parents are like, oh, I got a good baby.
Right,
And
right.
then second night rolls around and they're like, oh no, now I have a bad baby. Because yeah, all of a sudden it feels like you can't soothe them and they're cranky.
You
Yeah,
can't put them down without them being upset.
yeah.
Yeah, the word I often use to describe that kind of behavior in a baby is squirrely.
Squirrely,
Mhm.
squirrely babies on that second
Mhm.
night. And
Mhm.
it is like the evening, it's like from, I would say maybe anywhere from 4 p.m. to like maybe 2 p.m.
2 a.m.
Commonly, yeah, 2 a.m.
Yes.
Sorry. And then commonly, it's from like 5 to 10 into
Mhm.
11, just when parents are like, oh my God, I'm ready to go to bed,
Right.
the baby's like, no, that's not going to happen.
Right.
And so, what does this look like in real terms? Like, what's happening with the baby and the parent?
Well, what's happening is the mother nurses the baby and then
Yeah,
she goes to put the baby down, and then the baby just immediately wakes up and starts crying or
yeah,
fussing,
yeah,
and it's like he wants to nurse again. And so, the issue with that, of course, is then mothers start to worry, oh no, I realize my milk hasn't increased yet,
hmm,
and maybe I just don't have enough milk yet for my baby. So all kinds of, mental processes
right,
go on around that.
right. The baby is starving,
Right.
and I don't have enough milk.
Right.
And then we can often have healthcare providers or family
Right.
members like, oh,
Right.
the baby looks hungry,
Right.
and so they get that negative reinforcement.
And they'll say your milk isn't in yet,
Yeah, right.
which of
Instead
course
of,
we know
yeah,
that milk is there. It's just smaller in volume.
exactly. The colostrum is there. It's in perfect amounts for the baby. It's a well-planned system.
Right.
Yeah, so the baby could either, as you say, nurse to sleep and then we try to put it down, or the baby is comfortably asleep on the parent's chest and they try to put
Hmm.
it down.
Hmm.
I think that that's the big thing. It's like the baby is content on the body,
Hmm.
and then we try to put it down, and the
Hmm.
baby's like, no, 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 no,
Hmm.
no. Why do you think that this is happening?
Well, one of the tips, because when I was working with, I had a contracting job with a hospital where one of
Yeah,
our goals was to increase exclusive breastfeeding rates at hospital discharge. One of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to try to get everybody on the same page, and
yeah,
make it consistent. So I created this handout, and I came to, like, I put in one of my pet theories in this
mhm,
handout about why it's happening, because
right,
my theory is always, oh, babies are born with their days and nights reversed. And that's because during pregnancy, the mother's walking around during the day, and that settles the baby, and the baby sleeps during the day. And then when she lies still at night, then the baby's awake. Now, I
mhm,
have no idea if that's the
right.
case or not. I think
It's a
I
good
think
theory.
it's a theory, right?
Yeah, yeah. And because basically the baby's being rocked all day to sleep, and then
Hmm.
at night they're like, hey, what's happening?
Right. But
And go ahead.
I was going to say, I've read in a couple articles recently about sleep that
Mhm.
the way the researchers are saying it now is that babies are essentially born without a biological clock.
Mm,
They're not saying that the days and nights are reversed, which, we do have research to show babies do nurse more at night in the beginning and sleep more during the day. But they're just basically saying there is no biological clock that needs to be set after
mhm.
birth.
Another thing that we do know, some babies, if there's bright lights or noise, they
Hmm.
will kind of play possum. And so during a hospital day or even at home with visitors,
Right.
this baby's like gold, they're sleeping away. But in
Mhm.
fact, they're like, I don't know what's going on. So I'm just going to lay here quietly.
And a tune out.
And then once it quiets down in the evening, which it typically does, the baby's like,
Mhm.
now it's safe for me to be up and awake. And so here I am.
Mhm.
So that's another possibility. And there's a wonderful second night handout by Jan Barger, which we'll have a link to, that talks about, the baby was so warm and cozy and safe, constantly fed, so they never felt hunger. And now all of a sudden, after a kind of brutal experience, being born
A
is not
birth, yes.
easy,
Yeah.
they're like, it's cold.
Hmm.
They start to experience hunger.
Right.
They're not necessarily being held all the time, and
Right.
it's very disconcerting at best.
Yes.
So it could be that it just takes them, 24, 36, 48 hours to be like, no, no, I'm not happy with this change.
Yeah.
And so they learn to, find their voice
Hmm.
and share with us. But yeah, we're not exactly sure what is going on, but it's a pattern that we see
It's very common.
over and over again.
Right.
All right. Well, the thing about second night is there's a lot of things we can do about it, right?
Hmm.
We can help this baby because it's helping the baby through a transition. As you
Hmm.
say, it's a developmental stage. We need
Hmm.
to just help and support them. So, what are some of the things that families can do to help with this second night syndrome?
Well, I think it's just, having the babies on their bodies as much as possible,
Yeah.
nursing them, if even if they want to nurse continuously for a period of time, during the second night, just go back and forth from breast to breast, knowing that they're going to continue to get a little more milk every time.
Yeah.
And it's also going to help to bring their milk, increase their milk more quickly.
Mhm.
So that's a good, so I would say, the best way we can help them is to prepare them that this is
Mhm.
coming and encourage them, the parents, to
Right.
respond sensitively to their baby.
Right, because we're a carrying species that doesn't carry as much anymore. And
That's
so
right.
the baby's like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be in arms.
Right.
That's where I'm safe. Otherwise, a tiger could come eat me,
Right.
And so, in many ways, I am like, kudos to you, little baby, that you're
Yeah.
demanding
Yeah.
your, anthropological birthright
Yeah.
to be in
Yeah.
arms.
Yeah. Many Western cultures are trying to turn our babies into baby carrier, or, baby seat babies instead of carry
Yeah,
babies.
exactly. The car seat babies.
Right.
And sometimes the partner can be, holding the baby skin to skin.
Mhm.
It doesn't
Sure.
necessarily always have to be the parent,
Right.
but often these babies are like, no, no, no. The safest place for me
Hmm.
is to be at my food source.
Right. Right.
And we know that this frequent feeding at this time, about 48 hours postpartum,
Hmm.
is just a huge trigger
Hmm.
to the parent's body to start increasing milk.
Right. Exactly.
And so again, it's beautifully designed
To
as long as
finely
we're not
tune the system.
right. If we can just relax and let it flow
Mhm.
and know that it's normal. I think that this is the piece that really baffles parents
Mhm.
is,
Right.
and you talked about this. So talk about the mixed messaging.
Yeah. So I once spoke at a conference in California with a woman who I thought was so wise. I've repeated some of the things she said many times. She did all the education for her perinatal nurses in her entire hospital system. And one of the comments she made that really struck me was it's not breastfeeding itself that frustrates and confuses new parents.
Hmm.
It's the mixed messaging they get, the conflicting advice they get about it. And so when we were developing a strategy in this hospital where I was a contractor, one of the things, our goals was to get everyone giving the same message. Because I think the fact is that if parents are told, like given anticipatory guidance, told ahead of time, like during the day on that second day, you know, you need to know that this is coming. The
Hmm.
babies usually act this way on the second night. You need to know it's normal, and you
Hmm.
need to know that you cannot overfeed your baby during this time, that frequent nursing is really the solution and not the problem here.
Hmm.
That if everyone is giving them the same message, then they can relax and go with it. It's
Hmm.
only when they're hearing things like, "Oh, well, your milk isn't in yet, your baby needs formula now," or what's wrong,
Hmm.
maybe you're just not a big milk producer, or whatever. Those
Yeah.
kinds of things can just really deep six, a new mother's confidence in herself.
Right. If a nurse comes in and says, "Oh, little baby, this is such a hard, you're having a hard time getting used to not being in the wound.
Right.
Here, this is what you can do. Just keep the baby close, let them
Mhm.
nurse on demand. This will
Right.
bring in your milk faster. This will soothe your baby.
Right.
All will be well, and this is
Right.
normal."
So we developed a handout that basically said those things.
Yeah. And so, another thing that can really help is making sure, especially if you're at home, that you
Mhm.
have a lot of help,
Mhm.
during this
Right.
time,
Right.
because you're going to be your attention has to be on that baby. I mean,
Right.
literally, that baby is like, no, 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 me, look at me. And
Mhm.
so having other people around to make sure that the parent's being fed,
Right.
that someone's there to hold the baby when they need to go to the bathroom, all of those
Right.
things
And
can
I
really
remember
make a
I
difference.
remember the day that my granddaughter came home from the hospital, and I was asked to, her other grandmother, which is where she was living, she owned a bakery, and it happened to be Punchki Day, which is the day that
Ooh.
it's the day that these special Polish pastries were being made. It was their biggest money day of the year. And so she called me and she said, "Nancy, could you come and be there when they get home with the baby?" And I thought, what did I do right that I,
Mhm.
I had a chance to do this, because I'm the
Yeah,
mother-in-law, I'm not the mother.
yeah, yeah,
But I remember that first night, my granddaughter Kayla, her mother brought her into me. I had this little room where I was sleeping. She said, "I just can't handle this anymore. Could you take her for a while?" And so she and I had these wonderful moments of bonding and looking into each other's eyes in the middle of the night. I let her suck on my finger just a little bit. And then eventually, she got to the point where she wasn't having any of it. And
right.
I took her back to her mother, and her mother said to me, "Oh, I feel so much better now. Thanks so much." And then
Yeah.
she went, took care of her from that point on. But
Yeah, getting those, sometimes it can be like, oh my God, I can't do this. And at those times, allowing yourself to have a little break,
mhm,
because after an hour or two, it's like, okay, all right, now I can do this again.
mhm.
And so, don't be afraid. I think sometimes we think, oh, it has to all be kumbaya, and and if it's not, then there's something wrong with
Yeah.
me, or there's
Yeah,
something
no.
wrong with my baby. But yeah, there's rough times with babies. Um,
Yeah, no,
Parenting is hard.
it's very intense, especially during
Yeah.
those first 40 days.
Yeah. Well, and this is I'm an educator. Child development was one of my, specialties back in the
Mhm.
day, now infant development. And literally, we talked about that babies we're carrying species.
Right.
And so that baby's basically just asking for their birthright to be in arms. And this is such an opportunity for the parent to either embrace their cues, like, okay, this is what you need, and it
Mhm.
is a need, not a want. It's both,
Right.
but it's a need.
Mhm.
Or, oh my God, something's wrong. Nurse, take care of this baby because I'm
Mhm.
not competent. So it's a chance to either strengthen that bond or for that bond to get weaker, and that support again, the consistent messaging. So again, if a nurse comes in, it's like, oh yeah, yeah, but just you're doing just the right thing. Just keep holding them. That
Mhm.
baby's in the exact right place.
Yes. Yes. Like I said,
It's going to make such a difference.
definitely the consistent messaging is what makes it feel okay, even though it's hard.
Yeah. And talking about it prenatally, talking about it right
Right.
after, shortly after the birth. So again, you know what's coming. And again, letting families know this is a normal
Mhm.
developmental phase stage, and that it's going to be okay and there's nothing wrong with the baby. because I think that we're just so afraid especially with that first baby. You're like, oh my God, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And so, as supporters, again, that consistent messaging that this is fine, this is normal, here are things to do, is really going to help families get through the second night.
Hmm.
All right. Well, thanks, Nancy, for stopping by and talking about this with me.
My pleasure, Barbara.
All right. So, if you are enjoying All Things Breastfeeding, our podcast, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast listening device. If you're watching this on YouTube, you could also leave us a review, and that just helps move us to the top so more people can find us. So, thank you so much for listening to All Things Breastfeeding. We'll see you next time.